Hi there, welcome to Boxing Deep Dive. I'm Lyndon Hosking and great to have you along for another episode of Classic Fights. This is where we go back in time and revisit some of the best fights, or as it says, the classic fights, or the most contentious fights, whatever it might be, and we relive them, go over what we remember about them, and obviously, hopefully give you guys a bit of an insight about what made those fights great. And couldn't do it with anyone better than these two guys. I'm referring to Grant Tassie Brown and Mike Altamura. How are we, guys?
I'm great, brother.
Great to have you along.
Going good, Lyndon. Thank you, mate.
Now, it's always, I love doing these shows every week, and it really gets us back in those times. Obviously, classic fights and the dream fights as well. So this week, now Tassie, it was you, I think, wasn't it? This week's.
It's me. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can drum roll. Who have we got?
Well, I've got a classic, the Prince NASEEM HAMED versus Kevin Kelly. It was, I believe, it was the Prince's debut in America at Madison Square Garden, New York.
All right, so you can see there the WBO featherweight title, December 19. Strange enough, a week before Christmas, which is a little bit odd. It would have been nice and cold in New York, I'm thinking, 1997 at Madison Square Garden. And Mike, you're the guru of these types of things. What it was, as Tassie said, it was Prince NASEEM's first fight in America, and it definitely lived up to the hype, didn't it?
I mean, the Prince was going into this fight at 28-0, and he'd been profiled the previous 3 years on HBO. So really, the breakout fight for Naz was the unification bout with the long-time IBF featherweight champion Tom Boom Boom Johnson. That was really the fight that gave him high-profile exposure in the United States. And then he was gradually built into a crescendo of entering the States. They were teasing, taunting it. I thought the timing was perfect because they had teased it enough that the anticipation had built. HBO fully got behind this event. So, even before the event sold a ticket, the bills were covered in the sense that HBO gave Naz a guarantee of $2 million per fight on a 6-fight contract. So effectively a minimum $12 million deal. And to show how serious they were, they put over $1 million in promotional muscle behind all of the shoulder programming and promotional material advertising for this fight. So it really was built into a crescendo. And like I said, perfect opponent, Kevin Kelly, 47-1-2, former world champion, maybe slightly in decline. The previous year he'd gone life and death with Derek Smoke Gaynor in the fight of the year before landing a Hail Mary knockout with his, I believe, his right eye totally shut. And so, great record. Well-spoken, the Flushing Flash, Kevin Kelly, going to his backyard, New Yorker. And it was perfect because the press conference was going to be worth it. Naz come into this fight, of course, something we see a little bit more nowadays, but he was really the only one I can remember in the 90s with these spectacular ring entries. And so the anticipation was, what was he going to bring to the dance on his American debut? It was just exciting, perfect opponent, well-spoken opponent, right stage, right place, boxing history entrenched at MSG, just perfectly aligned.
Perfect storm. So Tassie, because the seed was set a little bit before this, wasn't it? I think they had some interviews in England and all the rest of it, and it really sort of built up, didn't it? And by the time they got to the fight itself, it was a nice little rivalry brewing there, wasn't it?
Yeah, mate. Look, you don't get someone to explain it quite as good as Mike Altamura, mate. He's so detailed in his evaluation of things, mate. So obviously, well done, Mike, as always. They were teasing it for a while. Naz was, selling out arenas in England. He was doing the entrances that no one was doing back then, and he could, he could really fight. He was knocking guys out. As Mike said, he beat some quality guys leading up to this. And Kelly, was a good veteran fighter. Said he had that fight against Gaynor. He'd been a world champion. He was a very good test for someone like Naz in his debut. And as I said, HBO got behind it, like Mike said, and it was the perfect time to launch the cocky champion from the Yemen-born NASEEM HAMED. You know what I mean? So it was it was a perfect time.
And Mike, the Americans weren't really quite sure what to make of Hamed, were they? Because he was a little bit, even though obviously that's the home of boxing, he was a little bit before his time. Obviously, it was before Mayweather, or just before Mayweather come onto the scene. And I know they'd been through Sugar Ray and all the rest of it, but he really was a different type of fighter, even for the Americans, wasn't he?
People always feel it's different, and there was a lot about Nas that was different. I think even, you look at the religious side, Nas being of Muslim faith, there was still not quite the understanding of different faiths back then that there is now. 25 years back, it was a completely different world. And so people couldn't quite figure out if Islam or being part of the Muslim faith was being brash and arrogant, because that's what a lot of people's introduction to the religion was, or their association with Nas. They didn't get him. They couldn't figure out, how could this guy be holy and spiritual in one way, but yet be so outspoken and so brazen and so, in their eyes anyways, disrespectful to their opponents. But to me, he was a breath of fresh air, and controversy creates cash, as they say. And I think that slowly, the Americans adapted to him. But yeah, he was something different. I mean, like I said to you, now we see it a little bit more. It's become part of boxing parlance. It's almost refreshing now when guys are just humble in the lead up.
Yeah.
But at that stage, 25 years back, there wasn't a trash talker in boxing like NASEEM Hamed.
And someone who could obviously back it up the way he did. I mean, his whole, not just the charisma, but the way he fought. He was so unconventional, wasn't he, Tazzy? He led with his left, he led with his right, he'd lead with an uppercut, he'd lead with a hook. You just didn't know what you were going to get, did you?
Yeah, very unconventional. Obviously, the famous Ingle Gym, mate, they had him at a young age, and they had, obviously, later on, you had Johnny Nelson and obviously Curl Brook, and they were known for sort of being a bit unconventional in their technique, but he could back it up, mate. Look, he'd done everything wrong. In some way, he wouldn't teach the way he fought, a bit like Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali used to lean back and done a lot of things, but he was Muhammad Ali. This was Prince NASEEM Hamed, and he had amazing power, though. That's where I really never understood where he had that fight-changing power for a little guy. And even though he threw punches in different angles and that, but yeah, he really had that KO power. And there wasn't many guys like that in the little divisions at the time, and he was the real deal. Like he backed it up, mate. If he wasn't backing it up, then we wouldn't be talking about him, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll get the fight rolling there. We're going to actually show the whole fight as we go, because it's not a long fight as we know, but I'll get it rolling as we talk there. And Mike, you obviously can't hear the even that there with him singing to Kelly, but even though you can't hear the commentary or the sound in it, the just the buzz of the crowd, you could just feel it, couldn't you, through the screen?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, this is coming off a spectacular entrance, so the crowd's buzzed to see it. I think probably 70% of them were there hoping to see him get face planted by Kelly. And most people in boxing knew that Kelly had a devastating right hook. Even though he wasn't a super renowned puncher, he could end the fight with a singular hook. So yeah, a lot of anticipation, a lot of buzz. Nas did predict he was going to go right after Kelly and take him out of there in a couple rounds. So yeah, here's the last moments, and that's a very, very young Benji Estevez there refereeing the fight as well.
Oh, okay, yeah, I didn't even recognise him there.
One of the world's best officials.
Yeah. So, Tassie, we're about to start round number one here. Obviously, the Americans, they're one of those sort of nations that, you haven't really proven yourself and you're not an elite fighter until you've proven yourself in the States. And so you can just imagine what was running through NASEEM's head. Then you can see he starts a fight with a lead uppercut. That's just the way he was.
Yeah, very true, mate. I mean, there's plenty of good boxing nations in the world, but, America's obviously always been the home of boxing. And until you go and fight there and win a title or defend a title, you're really not going to be recognised. So, I mean, so there's a lot of anticipation of how can he live up to the hype? Is he just another English hype train, or is he the real deal? So that's why it was so everyone was so eager. The anticipation was huge because people wanted to see it, if he was the real deal.
And you can see there, Mike, obviously he started really well, but you can see he's starting to respect Kevin Kelly, but you can see in a sec he does start to actually go after him. But I must admit, this is at the time, I watched it on replay, I didn't watch it live or whatever it was back then, but what was the feel sort of leading into the fight? Who was sort of deemed as the favourite? Was it obviously Kevin Kelly probably had the runs on the board, or was it NASEEM who had the excitement or whatever? What was the thinking from the pundits sort of leading into it?
Naz was about a 3-1 favourite.
Okay.
Yeah, he was about a 3-1 favourite, but a lot of people in the industry thought that Kevin Kelly might burst his bubble, that he had the right style. Like I said, the timing, probably catching Kelly slightly post-prime, but that's never stopped anyone turning back the clock and upsetting the uppercut. And what's interesting here is Naz starting off left-handed the whole round. You would have thought that he would have gone, he was a switch hitter, but you would have thought he would have maybe started conventional, but going hook for hook, leading off with uppercuts, dangerous game to play with a guy like Kelly.
You can see there too, Tassie, Kevin Kelly's looking at him going, what is this guy doing? Because he probably wouldn't have fought anyone as unconventional as this, or would he have? And you can see there he does almost catch him in a sec here, but yeah, go ahead, mate.
Yeah, mate.
There it
very
is.
Hard. Yeah, first knockdown there. So it's very hard to prepare for a NASEEM HAMED because, as I said, no one fights like him. No one can be unpredictable like Prince. So it's very hard to prepare for a guy like that. And I think the best way to fight a guy like that was later on as Barrera is just to keep with a straight lead hand. I mean, if you go throwing hooks and that against these guys and open yourself up, but very unconventional. No one had really seen the NASEEM HAMED before there was the Prince. He's definitely the one and only.
So, Mike, how old was NASEEM here? Because obviously he would fight Barrera in, 2001, I think it was, and only had the one fight after that. So how old was he here in 97?
I'm going off the top of my head. I'm sure he's born in 1970.
Okay, I'll see.
So that would have made him 27.
So he was 27 here.
Yeah, I'm sure he was born 1970. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, still very, very much in his prime. Very
Well, do you think it's strange that he waited that long to actually go to America, or that just sort of seemed to be the thing back then?
Well, he had some promotional issues as well, which kind of delayed the entry into the States. But no, I thought the timing was perfect because he really built himself into a household name in the UK. And even, like Naz said in the lead-up, he didn't need to travel to the States for this, but he wanted to go and beat up Kelly in his own backyard.
Yeah. Which, well, he almost got his wish. Well, this is round number 2. So NASEEM was down in the first round. There he goes
down
for
again.
A second and third time. You ever seen that, Tassie? He gets dropped, he gets up and gets dropped again.
Yeah, true, pretty much.
I've just actually looked it up. So Naz was 23 here.
Is that right?
For some reason, I thought he was a few years older. Yeah, he's 23. So my apologies on that. He'd been such a star for so long, it's hard to even believe he's 23 here.
Yeah. Well, that's what sort of gets me because, as I said, 4 years after this or 5 years after this, he was practically gone from the sport, and he just seems like he had so much more to offer. And of course, like the life away from the ring, all you got to do is look at him these days. He's about twice the size as he was. But what do you put that down to, Mike? We can cover this at another time, the Barrera fight. But what do you put that down to? After he lost to Barrera, he had one more fight, and that was it.
He was settled in life. I don't think he had a hunger to be a professional fighter anymore. He maybe had the hunger for fighting, but didn't have the hunger to train and to commit himself. And it's hard. You see a lot of these kids, they start boxing from a young age, and that's been their sole focus for 14, 15 years till they have any pillar of success. And then once it all comes and you're financially stable and liquid, then there's a lot of other goals in life. And I think Naz just didn't want to keep trading that off or, to go and put his name to fights when he wasn't fully committed to it. So actually, I applaud him for stepping away when he did.
Tassie, what do you think that you're right, Mike, why he walked away, but Do you think we ever saw the best of Prince Tassie, or do you think there were other super fights on the table that we sort of missed out on with him?
Oh, 100%. I mean, he started going into training camps just to lose weight at the end. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I know, a lot of fighters probably don't fight that often, so they don't train all year round. But instead of going in to still learn, like Canelo's, goes in a camp to work on his skills. He's fit when he goes into camp. Naz was pretty much rocking up and having to do. It was pretty much focused on
Just the
losing the weight. So then you're not improving anymore, and when you're not improving, I mean that's when it is time to walk away. So I think what I heard, because I think Emmanuel Stewart had him towards the end. He was going in just to lose weight, and that was it. It was just it was no more keeping fit. It was no more improving his skills. It was just to drop weight. So like Mike said, probably best to get out. And this is how much we have to appreciate Floyd Mayweather. Because no one made more money than Floyd, but that guy stayed fit the whole time. The guy never got beat by a guy that said, he didn't have the motivation to win because he got too much money. Now, like NASEEM, HAMED and Mike Tyson, a lot of other guys, they make the money and that's it. Floyd Mayweather was the only person, unless you can correct me, that was different when he made the money and still had the hunger.
Yeah, I suppose you might be able to throw Manny in there. I suppose he's probably the only one that would sort of come close.
Yeah, but I think Manny used to, like before he changed it, like he got into the religion. He did used to play up and do the drinking and the gambling, I believe, where Floyd literally, I think, was just pretty much clean the whole time.
Yeah. Well, they've both had unless I've missed one there, a knockdown. Prince has been down twice and KELLEY once so far. This is halfway through round 3.
This round is slow compared to the first 2 rounds.
It was. Watching it back, I was like, this is a little bit slow. Mike, I'll ask you just with Prince NASEEM, where do you rank him in the scheme of things? Do you think, as I said before, is he a little bit of a talent, not wasted, but maybe not fulfilled? Where do you see him in the history of boxing?
No, I think he's one of the best managed talents of all time. I think that he threw away the WBO featherweight title rather than face his mandatory, which was Juan Manuel Marquez.
Geez, that would have been a great fight too.
I think he dodged guys like Freddie Norwood and fighters like that in his prime that might not be household names now, but stylistically were just.
Freddie Norwood.
Yeah, exactly. And second loss. Yeah, Marquez got DQ'd on debut, but first real loss on Marquez's record. And that's the thing. Like, I think that Naz, he was managed very well. I still rate him, definitely top 5, top 6 greatest British fighters of all time.
Wow, okay.
Top featherweights of all time, probably controversial, but I'd struggle to place him in the top 10.
Okay.
But when you look at greatest entertainers in boxing ever, he's got to be top 10 of the greatest entertainers. And I think that sometimes the mainstream fans get confused with entertainment comparative to greatness. We see it now with Mike Tyson. People overrate Tyson historically because they find him entertaining. They found his fights entertaining. Naz, to me, though, got to be up there with Ali as the greatest showman boxing's ever seen.
Yeah, so this is round 4. This is, without giving it away, I think most people know this is the round that ends. Tassie, before we get on to the finish there, how do you think Prince NASEEM would have been these days in the age of social media?
Wow. It'd be very interesting. But, I mean, this is what I love, though. Anyone can be well-known on social media these days, whether you're just any bum, and I mean bum. To go and make it like Prince NASEEM, HAMED did, and all these other great fighters, to show the personality, they done it in the ring. They done it with the media. These days, as I said, any nerd or loser, #loser, can be well known on Instagram. Doesn't mean shit.
Yeah.
These guys done it the old-fashioned way by being a great boxer and great entertainer.
So
Sorry if I offended anyone, any of you losers that do TikToks and think you're well known because of social media. You ain't done shit. Anyone can get on a camera and talk shit. Don't mean shit.
Down goes Kelly. That was a heavy knockdown.
So we're halfway through round 4. Kelly's hit the deck. He's got the hands up. He's ready to go, but he's also looking at his corner, thinking, I think I'm in a bit of trouble here.
Yeah, that one, you can see it took the legs out of him.
And I think
heavy shots.
Yeah.
And knockdown to Prince NASEEM now.
Well,
it's a little bit stiff, that one, isn't it? I had to rewind it about 3 times to actually see what happened there, I must admit. I couldn't see it, but technically it's a knockdown, isn't it, Mike? His glove hit the canvas, so...
Yeah, Benji missed one when my fighter had his opponent's glove touch the canvas, and we would have won the fight if he gave it.
Right?
So I'm going to hold him to it.
And there's the knockout there.
And there it is.
Beautiful.
What a left hand.
I must admit, this is the end here, of course, but I didn't put the interview in at the end. I was tempted to, but Kelly, after the fight, Tassie, was actually quite happy with himself and so, the referee stopped it, I got caught, but up till then I was dominating the fight. I don't know what fight he was watching, but didn't look like that to me.
Might have been a bit of concussion, mate.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's... I've long argued against fighters that have been stopped being interviewed post-fight because of that, because I don't think that their cognitive function is fully intact. But maybe that's how Kelly felt it was going. I guess he had scored 2 knockdowns, and for a round and 45 seconds he was on top of the world. But then Naz started to warm up.
Yeah, no, you're right. But I just found it a little bit odd. So Tassie, after that, tell us a little bit about both guys. I obviously did mention before that Prince NASEEM would eventually fight Marco Antonio Barrera. What about Kelly? What happened to him going forward?
I think Kelly won one, and then he actually got rematched with Derek Gainer and got stopped, my belief, against Gainer. And then had a bit of a mixed result, a bit of a mixed bag after that.
Yeah, well, he fought to 2009, Mike. I'm seeing there he lost a lot of fights, including one Bobby Pacquiao I'm looking at there. So he probably lost about as much as he won after that, didn't he, after the Barrera fight? Sorry, I'm thinking of Prince NASEEM, but he lost to Barrera as well in 2003. I'm probably telling you all these things but and Morales,
Yeah, Eric Morales stopped him early, and that was probably like his last dance at kind of that fringe elite level. Post that, like he was in and out. He was signed a square ring, Roy Jones's company, and he would mix and match. He would get a win on one show, commentate the next show, and so on and so forth. So he built quite a good commentary career, and then also became a reasonably good trainer as well. And I just think that Kelly, and look, this might sound harsh, you could probably see it a little bit there in the 4th round. I think that was his last round where he was fully committed to the sport. I think even the first 3 rounds, I think even from that 4th round, you can almost see the reservation on his face of wanting to be a fighter. And I think that he probably wrestled with that his next 25 plus fights, which is why he had such a mixed bag of results every time he stepped up. I think muscle memory, he was slick enough and good enough to beat the C plus tier fighters, but when he got to like the B plus and the A tier fighters, I think that was probably the difference at that stage of his career.
Yeah, it's a tough gig when your heart's not in it, I suppose. But Tassie, mate, excellent job. It forced me to watch the fight again. I hadn't probably seen it in about 10 years. I really love going back and watching the 4 rounds. I implore, if you're out there and you've obviously just seen the whole 4 rounds, and go back and watch it on YouTube with the sound up and all the bells and whistle. It's the atmosphere, and I mean the Poms always bring a great atmosphere to any fight night anyway. But great atmosphere. So watch it on YouTube. So it's back to me next week, boys. Now, Mike, you'll be able to relate to this one because I reckon we've spoken about this fight in the past. It's not a classic fight as such. It is an infamous fight. I want to go back and do the Luis Resto. Who was it?
Billy Collins.
Billy Collins. Yeah. So I want to do that fight. I almost contemplated doing maybe a special one aside, but I think we'll put it in because it was classic in its own way because it's got its own dark and tragic history, of course. So I want to go back over that one. As I said, it's not necessarily a classic fight as such like these ones, but I think it's a fight that every fight fan out there, especially the new age ones, need to know the history of, because it was not good. So that's Billy Collins versus Luis Resto, and we'll cover that in the next episode. But as always, guys, thanks Tassie, great job, Mike. Always love your input, and we'll catch you next week.
Thanks, mate. See ya.